Hey everyone, welcome back. So this is session 4 of National Story Planning Day. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the day, just to get started, the going on today was National Story Planning Day. So I've been running a 4-session Periscope workshop to help you plan your story for National Novel Writing Month. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm JenniferBlanchard. I'm an author and a story coach. I work with serious emerging novelists who want to save time and cut years off their learning curve so they can write better stories and get published faster. And like I said, today is National Story Planning Day. It is the very first time I've ever done this. And Deb, you can't access the workbook. Okay, this is the link for the workbook, bit.ly/storyworkbook. If for some reason it's not working, you can go to JenniferBlanchard.net/workbook and find it that way. And those are the only 2 links I have. So if for some reason it's not working, it might be your internet connection possibly. I've tested it a couple times, so it should be working. Again, so bit.ly/storyworkbook or go to JenniferBlanchard.net/workbook. And let me know if for some reason that doesn't work. But anyway, so anyone who's just joining us, this is where you can, hello Kazakhstan, how are ya? So anyone who's just joining us, you can go to this link right here to get a copy of the workbook, which will walk you through all the story planning things. So basically everything you want to know about your story before you write it. And this is most especially if you're doing National Novel Writing Month, which is happening starting next Sunday, November 1st. If you are doing that event, you would definitely want to come up with a story plan or at least know as much as possible about your story before you write it, because if you don't, you're going to end up with 50,000 words that probably won't be a story and will probably disappoint you, make you feel like you didn't even accomplish anything, and that just sucks. So use this guide, this workbook. So again, the link here, bit.ly/storyworkbook. And you can download that and it will tell you all of the basics. So there's a lot of stuff you need to know about your story before you write it, but that workbook covers the most important things. So if you knew all of these things, you would be much further ahead than you would be if you just sat down and started writing. All right, so this is the final session of the day. So in session 4 for National Story Planning Day, a big thank you to everybody who joined me this whole day. And I signed up but nothing downloaded. I'm on my iPad. It will be emailing it to you. So whatever email address you use, just check your email and it's going to send you the link right in your email. And it should send it right away, but if not, within the first 10 or so minutes. Gotcha. Yep. So again, let me know if you don't get it for some reason. And anyone who saw the Facebook event, I've been trying to post these videos in there. So if you're not on there live, you can catch them and all that stuff. So, okay, so session 4, just to recap today, session 1, I talked about idea, concept, premise. Session 2, I talked about characters, plus all the additional stuff you really want to be thinking about before you start working on your story structure. Session 3, I talked about story structure, and now I'm going to talk to you about the beat sheet. So a beat sheet, for those of you who aren't familiar with this term, is basically just a list of the scenes that you need in your story. So rather than, going really deep on all the scenes, it's just a very specific bullet pointed list. So, number page 1 through 60 or however many scenes you think you're going to have. Or if you downloaded the workbook, there's a nifty little beat sheet form right in here that you can just fill out. And I've marked in there where the plot points should land. Now, this is just a general guideline, so feel free to move them either forward or backwards a little, depending on your story. And so I thought I would just walk you through the context of story, the 4 parts of story, and the character context to kind of explain what you'll want to have happening in each part of your story. So again, if you got the workbook, you can follow along with me, and if not, you can download the workbook by going here. And okay, so just to get started, so the first 14 or so scenes in your story are going to be part 1, which is setup. So all of these scenes are basically setting up what's coming at your first plot point. Your first plot point usually happens around scene 13 to 14 in the story. It could happen around 12. It might happen at 15. Again, it's a general area. So about 20% into the story, up to 25%. But you want it to land somewhere around there. Otherwise, your plot points will be a little bit off where they're supposed to be. So, but all your first, 14 scenes are set up. So that's setting up what's coming in the story. That's telling us, who your antagonist is, what their backstory is, where they're at in their life currently, telling us more about just who they are as a person, what they have at stake for them right now, kind of developing the stakes that are going on, maybe foreshadowing some stuff that's coming, of course, maybe foreshadowing the antagonist. Now, this depends on how you plan on introducing it. So sometimes the antagonist, oh, good, you got it. Perfect. Okay, so again, there's videos that you can go back and check these out. So if you haven't been on live all day, the videos are available at this link right here, actually. Where is it? Catch.me/inkybites. So for some reason, if you haven't been on live, you can catch the replays and get the instructions for each section of the workbook. All right, so in part 1, like I said, it's called setup. The other thing you want to know about this is the character context. So in a story, your character has an arc, a character arc that they're going to fulfill. Now, this is them overcoming their inner demon or inner demons if they have several. And so they do this in context to each part of the story. And each part of the story basically tells you how they should act. So in part 1, which is setup, the character context is orphan. Now, the reason it's called orphan is because they haven't officially been adopted by a story yet. So your story officially begins at your first plot point. That's when meaning is imparted. That's when the journey truly begins, when the antagonist gets introduced. So until then, a story hasn't adopted your main character. They're just living their everyday life, doing what they do on a daily basis. And then something happens which causes them to be on a totally different path than they were for the first 14 scenes of the story. Now, once you hit your first plot point, we are shifted into part 2 of the story, which is reaction. So this is reaction to your first plot point. So all of the scenes in this part, you want to have reaction scenes. Now, your character context is wanderer. So what that means is the character has officially been brought into the story. Now they're wandering around trying to figure out what to do next. So they're reacting. They might be hiding out. They might be running for their life. They might be laying low. They might be trying different things and failing. So again, you want to remember, if your character does try to take action in part 2 of the story, they have to fail or they have to not succeed fully because it's not really time for them to take action yet. But they will, and that's coming once your midpoint hits. So once we hit the midpoint, which is a context shift that changes the direction of the story, that's when we shift into part 3, which is attack. So now your character is officially allowed to start taking action and start overcoming the inner demons and starting to get toward defeating the antagonist. Now, that's not to say they'll be fully, making it happen in this part of the story. This is where they're just now starting to get their kind of wheels turning on it. And so they may fail a little bit, but they may move forward still. So, it's up to you how much they get accomplished in part 2, or part 3. But once they're in part 3, they're allowed to officially start attacking. And then we hit the second plot point, which of course is the final piece of story structure, which now moves us into part 4 of the story. And part 4 of the story is resolution. So all of the scenes that happen after your second plot point are going to be resolution scenes. They're going to be scenes that are wrapping up the story, tying up any loose ends that are going on. Of course, if it's a series, then you're going to leave some of the loose ends open, but close the most important ones that were relating to your core story. And your character context in part 4, is martyr. So what this means is the character, the protagonist, is now absolutely, without a doubt, has all the information they need, and they are now fully willing to do whatever it takes to defeat the bad guy, even if that means having to sacrifice something, having to sacrifice themselves, or potentially die. Now, as you know, most of the time, protagonists do not die in stories. They do sometimes, but it's pretty rare. And so the martyr context is really more just about them being willing to do anything, up to the point of giving up their life to make it happen. Now, again, most of the time they don't end up giving up their life, but they may end up sacrificing something really important to them or something they thought they wanted that they now don't want anymore because the story has changed so much. That's up to you to decide. But that is basically how a story goes together. And the beat sheet, which again is in this workbook, will be a good place for you to just start listing out all the scenes you're going to need. Now, I like to start with a beat sheet and just really go, okay, what scenes do I have? I'll put them down in a list. And then I may reorder them based on, if I feel like something should happen sooner or later, within the same context of each part, obviously. You don't want to start moving things around so that you have reaction scenes in part 3 or resolution scenes in part 1. You never want that. You want it to stay linear as far as the context goes. And then I developed something deeper. So I didn't put this in there, but basically once I have my beat sheet, I will go deeper on each scene and I will develop an actual, what I call a story roadmap. But the idea is just going a little bit deeper on each scene, figuring out, where is the scene happening? What is the mission of the scene? Where is it taking place? What time of day is it taking place? But these are things you would develop after you have your beat sheet. And again, there's so much more I could tell you about story planning and probably a million more things I could have put in this workbook. What I wanted to do was give you just basics, so the bare minimum stuff you want to know about your story before you sit down to write it. And so that's what I have in this workbook. So again, if anyone has questions about the beat sheet or anything else that I've covered today, or just writing stories in general, feel free to put them in the chat box now. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up and go celebrate the very first National Story Planning Day having been a success. Here is the link for anyone who just joined, bit.ly/storyworkbook, if you want to. Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so glad it was useful for you. If you haven't gotten the workbook yet, here's where you can go to get that. And like I said, October is National Story Planning Month, so I've been doing National Story Planning Month all month. Today was just kind of a special one-off day. But I'm actually doing Periscopes 5 days a week this coming week, so Monday through Friday, talking a lot more about beat sheets and story roadmaps and planning your scenes out. And then later in the week, I'm going to just give you some tips to help you with, just making sure you're prepped for Nano, as far as like make sure you have a survival kit and all the stuff you need. You are very welcome. Medlem 101, you are so welcome. I'm glad it was helpful. Deb, I am so glad it was helpful. You are all so very welcome. And yeah, so we got 7 days until NaNoWriMo starts. And so this workbook will really help you to have a solid basic story plan that you can use to write your draft. That way you're not just sitting down November 1st and writing by the seat of your pants. You actually know your story a little bit, and you have enough of it figured out that when you get to the end of the month and you have 50,000 words written, there'll be 50,000 words you can actually do something with. So, but all right. Last chance for questions. Otherwise, I'm wrapping this up and going to relax for the rest of the night. So again, I'll be back tomorrow with another Periscope talking about scene planning and story roadmaps to kind of give you a much deeper look at that. So if you're interested, you can definitely check that out. And if you want to see any of the replays from today or from any of the other story planning sessions I've done this whole month, you can go to this link right here, catch.me/inkybytes. That is my Twitter handle. Jean Susan, you are so welcome. And you can check out the replays. So there's all the replays from today, as well as the earlier stuff I did this month, all leading up to story planning. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I had so much fun today. I absolutely love talking about stories, and I love that there are writers who want to learn how to plan their stories before they write them, because honestly, that was the thing that changed my writing life in such a huge way. Is, figuring out my story first, messing with the details ahead of time, because, without doing that, I would just write and write forever and never really get anywhere. And by using the information that I've given you in this workbook and that I've talked about on the Periscopes today, I'm able to come up with a much better story, a stronger one that is going to help me actually finish and publish, which I did this year for the very first time. Ken Casey, you are so welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. All right. Well, everybody have a great rest of the night, and I hope to see some of you tomorrow on my Periscope. And if not, I will catch you the next time. Have a great night.